Hi, this is going to be a short, hopefully, video about Isaac's Tea Trail, which is a long distance path in Northumberland. As we walked it, it's about a 72-kilometre loop. That's about 43 miles, though we did add on a short extension, so it can be more like 36 miles if you just do the straight route. We quite like watching YouTube videos about backpacking routes to give us a little bit of an idea of what they're like in terms of landscape and so on. So we thought we would make a short video about this in the hope that it might be useful to other people who are thinking of walking Isaac's Tea Trail. We're going to basically work through our photos and have a chat about them. This is me, I'm Ben.
This is me, I'm Catherine.
And we walked the trail in May 2016. We walked it over 4 days, so we took a reasonably easy pace. This is us all packed up and ready to go a couple of days before. As you can see, we've got our pack weight, including all our food for those sort of 3 walking days spread over 4 days, down to about 11.5 kilograms, which I think is about 26 pounds, which we were very pleased with, and we felt comfortable walking with that amount. This was our first backpacking trip. We put a lot of work into getting the gear right, and we were generally pleased with that. You will see at various times in this video our little friend here.
It's our son's hedgehog.
He's called Autumn. He insisted on having his photo taken regularly so that we could show his picture to our children when we got back from the trip. So we decided to start the route at Alston. This is not the normal starting place, but it's the nearest place to us from home. And we found a very convenient car parking place there. We parked at the recreation ground campsite, which is just off the A689 off Jollybeard Lane. And there was plenty of space there. We reached there about lunchtime on the Saturday.
Yeah, the parking was free. We left it there the whole time. There was no problems.
We even found some friendly passers-by to take our photo just as we were about to set off. One thing we can say is the route was very well waymarked. This was our first waymark just outside the town of Alston. And these waymarks are pretty much everywhere that you go. Perhaps there's 1 or 2 fields where you've got the map. It makes it easier to see where you're going on the other side because you can't see the other side of the field, but generally very easy to follow. A lot of effort's gone into waymarking extremely well. And for us as our first route, though we're quite competent general walkers and navigators, it does give you that reassurance, yes, I'm on the route.
We're just getting the boots right before we went. There were more waymarks than people on this route. It was amazingly quiet. A lot more sheep than people as well.
So this is a really good idea of what that first section is like. The first few miles out of Alston, it's following the Pennine Way. It's pretty much empty fields. You climb up and gain some height, but it's not that high. And there are lots of sheep. Bah. As you can see, you do get some nice views quite quickly. You've climbed up high enough above the valley to be able to start getting a bit of a vista of what the area is like. Lots of these on this route. There are a lot of stiles. So if for any reason you struggle with stiles, don't try to walk Isaac's Tea Trail.
There are a lot of bridges. Our little hedgehog friend wanted his photo taken on every bridge.
The rucksacks, by the way, are Osprey Exos 48s, which are only just over 1 kilogram each, about £100 each, and we were very, very pleased with them. We really felt that they held the load in the right way. They made it easy to carry, and we would recommend them to anybody.
This was an amazing view, amazing bench overlooking this Roman fort, which made a nice first stop. The hedgehog was enjoying the dried fruit. One of the many animals we met on the route, a pheasant perched on a bridge.
Yeah, there's this little old railway here. I'm sorry that's out of focus, but quite a few little interesting things like that. But even there, hardly anybody around, just one or two people on the station. This was on a bank holiday weekend. We really did find the route surprisingly empty of people. We saw we saw two other people properly out walking during our entire time on the route, plus a few dog walkers, obviously close to their homes.
Nice opportunity to have a refreshing paddle. It was a hot day on that first day. We had great weather. The chickens decided to join us on the route for a few hundred meters, I think. It was a bit like Chicken Run. We didn't feed the hedgehog to them.
Or them to the hedgehog. This is climbing up towards Clargill Head, which is something like 12 kilometres from our starting point in Alston, 7.5 miles thereabouts, and coming towards the end of our first day, because of course we didn't start walking till lunchtime. So by this time we have properly gained some height, and we're about to sort of come out really onto the moors on the top. We were camping. We were carrying a moderate weight tent, I must say. That's one of the things we're going to be replacing before we do our next walk, to get something lighter. And we managed to sneakily wild camp the first 2 nights, because there aren't many campsites. So this is tucked away on a bit of a dry bit in the midst of what is otherwise quite a boggy plantation at or around Clargill Head. A lot of the plantation that's shown on the map has been cut down, but there are still some bits of it, and it seemed a good place to hide away. We were confident we wouldn't be disturbed, and we certainly, if you'd walked up there half an hour after we'd left, you'd have had no idea anyone had been there. We do make very sure we leave no trace.
Pine needle tea, absolutely delicious. I can recommend it.
I didn't take pine needle tea bags, however.
Which I expected him to produce. That's where the hedgehog slept. That's where I slept.
And that's where you woke up.
We like our coffee.
It's only 11 grams, that GSI coffee filter, and worth every gram.
That was first thing in the morning when we set off. About 7 o'clock we were walking in the morning.
This section is sort of properly lonely over the moors here. This is actually a byway, so you could, in theory, get some motorised traffic across it, but we didn't see anybody else at all up on this moor. It was really quite atmospheric, a lot of curlews and some oyster catchers. So all the calls of those, what are in the winter coastal birds, in the summer come out onto the tops, calling all the time. It was really quite atmospheric. Don't we look elegant? Then this is the long drop down towards, there's a youth hostel at the bottom of this section. So if you wanted to have a slightly longer first day and you wanted some accommodation, that's certainly somewhere that you could stay. That might even be the youth hostel from once we're across the valley. I'm not sure. Oh, and there is a deer in that photograph. There's a long section on what was day 2 for us, where you're walking along quite high up the side of the valley, looking down over this long valley, and it was beautiful. It's definitely farmland, not really wild, but very few people around, so you did get quite a good sense of isolation from it.
Hedgehog selfie.
So we came out then into this wooded section. This is Hag Wood. And actually, one of the nice things about the walk is how varied it is. There's woodland, there's farmland, there's that wild moorland. There's a number of river valleys that you follow. Especially when you've got weather like this, that's a real benefit, isn't it? It's really nice.
The hedgehog, again, on a bridge. There were plenty of little river crossings. This was a pretty spot. It was tiring.
Yeah, I think we walked to Allendale on this day, and we came out through the other side of Allendale, and it took us a while to find somewhere to camp where we would feel that we would be invisible to anybody. We did eventually find a place down by the river, but we had walked quite a long day by that point. I would say that we'd probably walked around 23, 24 kilometres, which for us is quite a long way. But we did get to see this baby rabbit sitting there enjoying the sunshine. And we did find this lovely spot down by the river. It was a bit of a clamber down to this spot, but we were pretty certain we'd be undisturbed there, and we certainly weren't doing anybody any harm. And it was a nice place to sit down by the river having our dinner. Very, very pretty spot.
These were Ben's designer sandals.
Very lightweight. They're only about 80 grams a pair, which they weren't actually that useful on these wet grass sites. But on our final day, at a campsite, there was a rocky path down from where we were camped to the toilet block, and they were absolutely brilliant for making that bearable, but still letting the air get to your feet without you having to put your boots back on.
Ben made our tea. This is rehydrated spaghetti bolognese.
The dehydrator is a good thing for sure. The parmesan adds some calories. So next morning we set off. The next morning it was cloudy and misty, grass very wet with dew, and we both ended up with slightly damp feet despite nominally waterproof boots after walking through this for a while. But it was quite atmospheric walking up through these fields in the mist.
We should have put our gaiters on, but we just carried them instead.
Yeah, that was really useful, wasn't it? So we then started to head out onto the moors for what really is the longest moorland section, falling between some distance after Allendale and Nenthead. But as we set off up that section, we found we were still feeling pretty fresh, and we decided to take the detour that is detailed in the guidebook to Allen Heads. We walked 11 kilometres or thereabouts extra for a bacon sandwich. And so this particular version of that, we were following the River Allen, the same river we'd been camped by the night before, but much higher up its course, which was a very pleasant walk.
And considering we hadn't been able to see anything on the tops because of the mist, it was pleasant to get down by the river for a while.
Yeah.
The hedgehog enjoyed the bacon sandwich when we got to Allen Heads.
And in fact, it was just as we were leaving Allen Heads, it's the only time we saw any other walkers on the route. And they were only on the extension. They were just out for a walk. They weren't on Isaac's tea trail specifically. So we then climbed back onto the tops again and went over towards Colcleugh or Colclough. I'm not quite sure how it's supposed to be pronounced. Not a trackless moor. There was a hint of a path up there, and there were periodic posts with signs on them. If it had been misty still by the time we got up there, we would have had to navigate carefully, but we would have been okay. And certainly up there, real sense of isolation. You were the only people in sight, really, apart from the odd car crawling across some tiny little unclassified road on a far hillside.
It was probably one of my favourite parts of the walk, just empty.
Crossing over into Cumbria, that happens as you sort of start to think about dropping down towards Nenthead.
This was at Nenthead. We passed this garden full of these amazing models, which is just quite a feat, really.
Yeah, definitely. Particularly Autumn was very happy to be able to call and see if his friends were in. There is a pub in Nenthead. We managed to buy some bottled cider, which we wouldn't have wanted to carry all day, but was definitely well worth carrying the last mile or two to get us to the campsite just after Nenthead, called Hag's Farm. Hags Bank campsite.
Specifically.
Had that view we've just seen. It was a great place to sit and drink that side. It was really nice to get a shower after a couple of days without one.
Yeah, it's a really good campsite, good facilities, nice and quiet. We met a motorcyclist who thought we were hitchhikers.
He definitely couldn't grasp the concept that you could travel from place to place without a motorized vehicle. It was definitely a rough, stony track from these camping areas down to the toilet block. So we were very glad of our bizarre 80-gram sandals. Here's our tent. It's about 3.3 kilos, that tent. So we are now in the process of replacing it with a lighter one because we're definitely wanting to do some more long distance walking. So there are loads of photos of it. So we could list it on eBay.
More bridges.
So we set off the next morning and only about 7 kilometers to go on the last morning. So we were back by late morning, but some lovely views over the river. And particularly walking down by this river was some of the most pretty river section between Nenthead and Alston. Went into this sort of gorge section with the water running over the rocks, and very attractive, very pretty. So here we are back in Alston. Here we are, in fact, back in the car park with some pies from one of the shops in Alston. Don't know what you'd say about the route. I'd say as our first experience of doing a long distance, I know it's not that long, but a relatively long distance, multi-day route, we really enjoyed it. The fact it was well waymarked helped. The fact it was a loop helped. The walking was very varied, and there was nothing too exposed or like mega challenging. So for us, I felt it was a really good first route. It has definitely given us the bug, and we are definitely hoping to do some longer routes and perhaps some higher routes over the next few years. How about you? What have you got to say about it?
Yeah, thoroughly enjoyed it, and definitely want to do more backpacking. And it was great just to have time together.
Yeah. So there you go. That's our little flavour of what Isaac's Tea Trail was like. We found it a really positive experience, and we hope that gives you an idea what it's like. You might be able to judge whether it's of interest to you too. Thanks for listening.